Right then. Oh, this is a bit of a drift there for Great Pump. Welcome everyone to XLR. It's a bit of a late start. So that's Jammy Cash with a bit of a drift there. Apologies for the slightly late start. I've just been doing some things, but we are up and running now as fastest lap of the session belongs to EJ at the moment with a 105.092. That's beaten by about 400ths by Jammy Cash, who set a 105.052, and Footface with a 104.4 with a very strong time there in his Ferrari. I'm really only just getting started at the moment. You may have been going for a while, but I haven't. Around the final corner, there's an Aston Martin of Fresh. He's doing an Inters run though, and it's a 108.4, which isn't awful at all for an Inters run. Then it's a McLaren who's going to be next to the line. That's Kyle, but he's only on an out lap. Then that's Archer on the final corner. He's on an in lap. Then we've got Dom around the final corner. Now he's penultimate corner of turn 9 into 10, and up to the line he goes. And it's a 105.1, from the Williams driver. Perkins manages a 104.8. Around the final corner now comes Mr. Business on an Inters lap, but he invalidated it. It would have been a 107.8, which would have put him ahead of Fresh. So at least on Inters he's a little bit faster than Fresh is. Max, having invalidated his time, is going to go again. There's Mercedes behind him of Jammy Cash and an AlphaTauri of Andrew, also beginning a lap, I want to say. As he does not have a competitive time at the moment. We've got Kyle around the final corner now of turn 10. And he's going to come up to the line. And it's P2 for Kyle with a 104.749. Which is not a poor time at all. Has disconnected. Believe I have him added. Yes, I do. I don't know why I said I believe I do. I know I've got him added. Yeah, Kyle jumped up. His McLaren into P2. Around the final corner comes the Alpine of Perkins. He's just starting another run with DRS active, and off she goes. Jammy Cash jumps up the field onto a 104.7 in his Mercedes car, and then who do we have next? I believe that is Havoc Gamer. He's invalidated his time. It's the other Haas, though, of Cliffy Clive, just beginning a run. Then it's the Mercedes of Mr. Business, who's still yet to put a time on the board. Car on the final corner has invalidated as well, so this lap isn't going to count. Yeah, his teammate Jay-Z is going to come around the final corner, but he backs off, and into the pit lane he goes. Then the Haas car of Havoc Gamer is just beginning a run as well. Then got Perkins around the final corner. She was a little bit down after the middle sector, but she comes across the line, and it's not quite an improvement. Across the line comes Great Pup, who's just beginning another run as well. Then we got Javi around the final corner with DRS active, and he goes to the top with a 104.392. Doing that on the medium compound as well is not at all shabby. Then the Aston Martin of Fresh just going again, doing his first run on actually correct tyres. As he's going to go again. Let me just invite Hearts again, because that first one didn't go through for whatever reason. That is a Ferrari around the final corner. I believe that is Footface going again. Indeed it is. And off he goes. Hearts rejoins the session. Currently on a 105.9. Would not be enough to get him through, though, especially considering he's got Fresh, Mr. Business, and Dan all sitting behind him. Into the pit lane comes the Haas car of Cliverty Clive, one of the few drivers that is behind Hart in this session. But he's not going to improve this time around. Improvement there from Fresh. It's not that significant, though. Only enough for P8, but it should be enough to get him through, or at least as it stands, it is. It's Perkins retires from the session, down in P6. Then we have the Ferrari Footface coming around the final corner. I think he's just going to start another run, though. Yeah, off he goes. Then we got down around the final corner, finally putting a time on the board, and it's the fastest time that we've seen so far, with a 104.282. As into the pits comes the Haas of Havoc Gamer, and into the final couple of corners goes the Aston Martin of Fresh. He's recharging his battery, so he may be going again. Yes, he will. He comes around the final corner, and he puts down the power, and off he goes. The two Ferraris appeared... No, apparently they're not. It looks like there was two red dots on the map right next to each other, but there was only one, which is Footface, who may or may not be improving this time around. And he comes into the pit lane and is not going to improve. Into the final corner as well goes Cliverty Clive. He's gonna be probably one of the next to set a time, but he's got Fresh, who is a little way behind him, coming into that through turn 6 into 7 at the moment, 2.5 tenths up, which would be a nice improvement. Z is gonna chuck it into those final two corners. And then he puts star power, goes right up to the white lines, really testing the limits of the circuit, and he improves into P4. Still behind Footface, though. Admittedly, he did set that time on the medium compound, but Footface in P3 is incredibly impressive so far. Then it's Hearts just beginning a run as well. As he's just taking us through that first corner at the moment. We have Cliverty Clive into the final two corners now. I think that was 11 seconds up on his personal best, but he chucks it into the last corner, and he chucked it a bit too aggressively. It was a 104.7 in the end, which would have been a very good time, but it's not going to count for the Haas driver's personal best, as we wait for Mr. Business to set his first competitive time. He's just beginning that run now. Jay-Z is just about a tenth up through those first two sectors. He's going to take it round the final corner. Up to the line he goes. Bit over 3 tenths found for the McLaren driver, and he jumps just ahead of his teammate and into P6. Around the final corner now comes Andrew, just on an outlap. Hart's jumped himself up into P11 with that latest effort, but it's still, I think, closer than he would have liked to that bottom 5. Mr. Business coming around the final corner now before he's going to go up to the line. DRS active, and Mr. Business puts his Mercedes into P2 with a 104.315. Jay-Z just on his way in. As we see at the moment, there's the Alfa Romeo of Max coming out the pit lane, joined with the Red Bull of Mr. Cactus. They're both on outlaps. They've just both begun them. Hart's coming into the pit lane, doing the opposite, and will go back to the garage and likely put some fresh rubber on that Alpha Tauri. His teammate Andrew's going to come around the final corner with DRS active, and it's 1.7 seconds found, but it's not enough to find him any positions on the on that timing sheet. Dom just beginning a run as well in his Williams car. Still not properly in that mindset. Oh well. We got Max coming around the final corner before he goes a little bit wide and will not set. He will not start a flying lap. It's Mr. Cactus around the final corner as well. He's going to hope he does actually set a flying lap. So is the Alpine of Falcon. Dom Rat coming towards that middle sector split. He's a 10th up on his previous best. Will be a decent time if he can keep it going. He's coming into a final corner. And then with DRS active, coming up to the line. And Dom jumps himself up into P10. Max just invalidating his time. He's not going to set one. EJ just starting one as well. Then Mr. Cactus coming towards the end of one, coming around the final corner. That's a half spin there for Falcon, who's just about kept in the straight line. Still somehow improves on his personal best. But that's only good enough for P17. Glivity Clive is 4 seconds up on his personal best as he heads around the left-hander of 6 into 7. He's 11 seconds up on that previous best, so he does need to find a decent bit more time through that final, through these final couple of corners if he wants to jump up further on this timing sheet. He comes around the final corner, keeps it within the white lines, and up he goes into P9, which should be easily enough to get him through. Hart's barely up on his time. Same with EJ, who could well see himself knocked out in Q1 as he comes around the final corner. He barely improves, and EJ, as it stands, is going to be knocked out in the first part of qualifying. Hart is right on the edge as well, as he's gonna come into the final 2 corners. Great Pup not currently on a lap. We may see him knocked out in Q1. Max is starting one as well. Hart's though around the final corner, a 10.5 up, which is enough. It's 3/10 in the end, which gets him all the way up to P6. So it's very fine margins around here at the moment. EJ's barely down on Great Pup. About 4/10 would see him jump up to where Hart's is. All the way up to P6. So it's super fine margins around this circuit. Great Pup not improving on this run. Max goes very wide there. Dips a tyre into the gravel. And that is not what he wants. Hart has disconnected again. Max has run out of fuel. So he's going to be right on the very cusp if cars behind start to improve. Speaking of improvements, we got EJ starting another lap, but he's got no ERS to play with at all. Great Bub just beginning one as well, but I don't think he's going to have the fuel required. So I think Magda's just going to scrape himself through with no fuel. EJ's down on his time through that first sector. He needs to find a lot of time. Yeah, he's backed off. He's not going to improve. And he's going to be knocked out in Q1 unless miraculously he improves through this middle sector when... Yeah, he's not improving. EJ's going to be knocked out. Andrew's knocked out. Same with Falcon and Mr. Cactus. So it's all down to Grape up here, really. Whether he can get through or whether he'll be knocked out as... Wait, no, he's already through. He's actually through anyway, so it doesn't matter. He's run out of fuel at the end. And he's going to come into the pit lane as well. And they're all going to come in. And EJ is going to join Andrew, Falcon, and Mr. Cactus and Fluffy as your eliminations in Q1. Right, so getting underway for Q2, if I can remember how to word. Oh, my game has just completely crashed. I don't even know what happened. It just closed. Alright, apologies for that. I don't actually know what happened. It just straight up closed. Now loading back in, and then guess we can restart Q2. Right. Now we see what's going on. And it appears to me that Fresh is leading this group of cars on the outlaps, on their flying laps. He's heading in towards turn 6 and 7 at the moment, on board with the Aston Martin driver. So he takes us into 7, round 8, right up to the white lines as always, really testing the limits of that Aston Martin. It's a flick to the right, just about keeping within the white lines again. Then it's a slightly slower right-hander before we come up to the line, and it's a 104.144 from Fresh, 104.9 from Max, 104.8 from Jay-Z. Jamie Cash slowing down before the line, having invalidated his time. So 103.8 from Xavi as the first. That's the best time so far of the session. All the other drivers slotting in with their times. Kyle jumps himself up into P3 with a 104.7. Next up is the Mercedes of Mr. Business coming up to the line. It's only 104.0 from him. Not good enough to match Xavi. Cliffy Clive around the final corner as well. His teammate Havoc Gamer just jumped up into P9. And Clive goes into P7 with a 104.9. Then the Alpine of Perkins just on her outlap. And that's looking like it will be all for the first runs. As Jamie Cash not going for another run. So, yeah, it's just Perkins who's only just begun her flying lap, and she's the only one on a flying lap at this stage, if the words would just word. She's going in towards turn number 3. Right, now gets back on the power, and in towards a hairpin right of 4. And around this little flat out kink for turn 5. And then it's a 5th gear left-hander of turn 6. And down to 5th to for turn 7. A flick to the right of 8. And then it's just turns 9 and turn 10. Just one last corner to go. She comes around that final corner. DRS active. And it's a time of a 104.7. Which is good enough for P6. 2 1,000ths of a second behind Foot Face ahead of her. But other than that, that appears to be it for the first runs. Unless Jamie Cash is on an attempt, which I think he may be. As he flicks to the right of turn 9 and then into 10. Before he opens that DRS flap. And Jamie Cash sets a 104.375. Rain. Do we have rain on the way? Grey Pup says he's seeing rain. There definitely does not appear to be any rain on this circuit. Coming out of the pits, though, is the Haskar of Cliffy Clive, just leaving the pit lane as we speak. As into the pit lane comes Perkins. It's a two-way swap. One going in, one coming out. As Jamie Cash and Fresh both limping into the pit lane with no fuel. Fresh does appear to have fuel, it's just Jamie Cash that doesn't have any. Then we've got an AlphaTauri of Hearts coming around the final corner. Cheers, yo. Hearts just beginning a flying run as well. Then we also have Jay-Z and Great Pup both beginning runs at the same time, as is Havoc Gamer, and he'll be followed by Footface. Hearts now is a tiny bit down through that first sector, but there's plenty of places to regain that advantage again as he takes us through the right hand of turn 4, then slightly further to the right of 5. Now he's taking us to the left of 6, and then he's going to cross that DRS to take not the middle sector split where he's 3 seconds up on his personal best, so it still won't be the most competitive time as it stands. He's going to need a lot more time than that through the final couple of corners if he wants to jump up the leaderboard significantly. It's 3.4 seconds gained, which is only enough for P10, but still a decent lap as Jay-Z jumps up into P5. Great Pup behind him goes into P6, so pretty decent times all round for those two. Hammer Gamer may have invalidated his time. He's got his teammate Clifty Clive right behind him, who's going to come into the final corner now, and we wait to see what sort of time he'll be setting in the Haas as he comes across the line, improved by a fraction, but can't jump up any places. Footface having to go again, but he's invalidated the final corner, and so he will not be going again. Dan around the final corner, championship leader in the Williams, hasn't won a race since he made it 3 in a row in Silverstone, I believe it was, all the way back then, but he's still in the championship lead following that start that he said. Start that he had. As he got Dom around the final corner in the other Williams car, improves by about 2.5 tenths, gets himself up into P11. Also jumping up the field is Max, who goes up into P8. Then he's followed by Havoc Gamer, who's 7 tenths up on his previous best. Still won't get him too far to the sharp end. He finds a second instead, and that's P5 for the Haas driver with a 104.418. Footface, having invalidated, is either going to go again or come into the pit lane. He does the latter, and into the pits comes the Ferrari driver down across the line. Can only manage P4, but he's not far behind Fresh and Mr. Business ahead of him. And all that matters really in this session is getting through in at least P10. As Dom comes into the pit lane, and likely so will Kyle. Yes, he does. And I think Max will be as well. Got Havoc Gamer coming into the pit lane as well, as is the Williams of Dan, and probably the Alpine of Perkins, although actually she does continue on. I think she's only just on a flying lap. She comes up to the line and just about falls short of improving. They're just foot face on an outlap. This is the sort of time when the pit lane will start to come alive, as all these drivers choosing to go slightly earlier to have a little bit of security if they make a mistake, and they are all on their outlaps. Right, we got Clifty Clive coming into the final corner. Clifty Clive around the final corner now, and off he goes. The top 6 are all confident in their times, which is, if I was a gamer, I'd be slightly concerned with that time, but he might be able to get himself through. He's going in towards turn 4 at the moment. It's an improvement there from Footface, puts him up into P8. But it's still relatively close to that drop zone, so he may still fall short of a Q3 space. Clifty Clive on the medium tyres is about half tenth up, but he needs quite a bit more than that if he wants to get through into the final part of qualifying. Jay-Z in P7 retires from the session, so it's all down to those last 3 places. Clifty Clive has invalidated his time anyway. He was a bit over a tenth up, but that wouldn't. It might have actually been enough to get him through. Kyle improves, but only up to P9. So Kyle will be in a lot of risk here in the final part. At the end of this Q2 session, Max coming up to the line can only find P8, but still, that pushes Kyle down into P10 and Grape up into that bottom 5. Then we see an improvement from Hearts, but it's not enough to get him through. He's going to be P12 at best. Footface into the pit lane. He's not going to be improving either as this qualifying session continues. Perkins just starting her final run of the session. Clifty Clive might be able to start another run if he gets a little bit of a wriggle on through this final sector. He should be comfortably within range. Great Pal has invalidated his time and his next one, so that means he's going to be knocked out in Q2 with only 20 seconds left on the clock. Havoc Gamer has come into the pit lane. He is out in Q2. So I think it's all going to be about whether Great Pup whether Perkins can improve enough to drop Kyle into the bottom 5, or whether he will have enough to just about make it through. The checkered flag has fallen, so anyone not on a lap at the moment will be knocked out for sure. Perkins only about a tenth up through that middle sector. She needs a bit more time than that if she wants to be safely and securely through into the final part of the qualifying. She takes it through the penultimate corner of 9 into 10. This is where it really matters. Does she have enough to get through into Q3? She improves to P6, and that pushes Kyle down into the bottom 5. So Perkins is going to be into the final part of qualifying. But will Kyle be able to join her? No, it's a big drift through turn 6. Touched a bit too much of that curb, and he will be knocked out in the second part of qualifying. He will not make it through. And that is qualifying 2 coming to an end. They're just waiting for Carl to come into the pit lane. He's just letting his car roll down this little hill here. And then he's going to be in the pit lane very, very soon. So, Q2 topped by Xavi, followed by Fresh and Mr. Business. Then they're followed by Dan, Jammy Cash, Perkins, Havoc Gamer, Jay-Z, Max, and Footface getting through on the edge. They're knocked out by about 8/100ths of a second. Was Kyle, then Great Pup, Hart, Clifty Clive, and Dom. But it's raining in Q3. And it is pouring it down on the circuit here. It's not actually pouring it down that much, but the driver's still going out on inters. Or slicks, should I say. So this is going to be, what this looks like it's going to be, is one lap from every driver on the slicks before it becomes too wet to go out again. I'm not sure what the weather forecast is looking like, as for some reason EA don't think that spectators need to see it. But we've got basically every driver coming out onto the circuit right now. And they all want to get in a lap before it's raining too much. And they can't anymore. Jammy Cash is leading this train out in the number 7 in that Mercedes. As we just wait and see who's going to master the changeable conditions. Well, actually, as I say that, it's mostly stopping raining, so maybe it'll be fine. But we just have to see who gets these conditions right, who gets them wrong, and then whether the conditions will worsen or whether they'll improve. Jammy Cash taking us through turn 9 and into 10. And off goes the Mercedes to begin the first run on these sketchy changeable conditions here in Spielberg. In the Styrian Mountains, he is blasting his way down towards turn 3 at the moment, getting upwards of 300 kilometers per hour, exceeding that comfortably, around 320 as a top speed there. He takes us through turn 3 before he gets back on the barrier again. He's going to open that DRS flap and head in towards turn 4. Again, at speeds of roughly 320 kilometers an hour. But now he's gonna head in towards turn 6, whereas one of the corners is probably most affected by wet conditions. It's normally a very high speed corner. They can't quite take it with as much confidence as they would otherwise. It is certainly appearing that it's starting to rain a bit more. Jammy Cash drifting his way through that turn 9 penultimate corner. He comes up to the line now, and it's a 108.1 from Jammy Cash, 108.2 from Jay-Z. Fresh, that's a 107.9. Mr. Business, 107.8. Perkins only with a 108.3. Footface with a 108.4. And these conditions definitely appear to be worsening. Havoc Gamer has invalidated his time, and that's probably going to mean it's P10 for the Haas driver if these conditions worsen. It's Dan coming around the final corner. He goes into P2 with a 107.9, despite having probably some of the worst conditions out of all of these drivers. Xavi's only just gone out onto the circuit. He's only just begun his flying lap. He's probably going to be seeing the bottom, or towards that bottom end of the top 10. They're all going for it, but I don't think Xavi's going to have enough to get himself into the top 7. I think it's going to be 8 for him. Probably at best, unless it stops raining before the end of the session. But at the moment, it is certainly looking like it's going to be a P8 at best, as he's got much worse conditions than all of the other drivers. He comes up to the light. What can he do? and it is only P8. He's a tenth and a half down on Footface's time. And I think that's a telltale sign of the conditions. As Dan and Fresh are having a reverse gear race, by the looks of things. Why are they racing in reverse gear? At least the drivers are having fun. Now that qualifying is all but over. For Q3, DRS has been disabled, which likely means that that is the last of the improvements we'll see in Q3. So at least as it stands, we're going to have Mr. Bissett on pole position, followed by the championship leader of Dan. Then they're followed by Fresh and Jammy Cash on row 2, Jay-Z and Perkins on row 3, Footface and Javi on row 4, then Havoc Gamer and Max on row 5. I mean, some drivers might try to go again, but I doubt we'll see any actual improvements. So, I've heard a source saying, and I've heard a certain rumour from a journalist that we've seen a certain driver heading to Silverstone recently. A certain driver who, let's say, it is always pretty fresh, may or may not have been spotted in Silverstone, according to someone that claims to work for Sky Sports. He's probably lying, but I don't know. We'll see. We got Footface on an intermediate run, but there's not a chance intermediate's going to be faster than the dries. Yeah, he's 6/10 down in that first sector alone, unless he can make up all that time again in the final sector, compared to the little grip they had on their previous runs. I don't imagine we're seeing any more improvements in Q3. And I think that is your qualifying done. Footface round 5, yeah, he's 1.9 seconds down. That's Q3 done. So it is going to be Mr. Business starting from pole position. Narrow margins put him ahead of Dan, but a narrow margin is a margin nonetheless. We've got drivers on the track, but yeah, I mean, we've got drivers on the track. It's not going to do anything. So let's have a quick talk about some of the confirmed news we've seen for this Tier 2 season so far. Alright, let's just go to the top of the city season stuff. Oh, Xavi's hit the wall in the pit lane. So, our first confirmed news was that we had Kyle re-signing with McLaren, and he's going to stay with them for the next, for the following season. So, yeah, Kyle staying at Woking with the Papaya team. Then, Mercedes confirmed the departure of both their drivers, Jamie Cash and Mr. Business. Mr. Business did sign with McLaren in Tier 1. What else do we have? Toto Wolff was spotted with a free agent. But we do have further elaboration on that, which was that a certain free agent has joined the Tier 2 grid for next season, signing with Mercedes, and said free agent how do I say this? May or may not be talking right now. Yeah, so I've signed with Mercedes for next season, which of course means I won't be around to go on date for Tier 2 next season. I should still be around for at least some of the Tier 1 races. Then what else did we have? Jay-Z set to leave McLaren at the end of the season after apparently falling out with the CEO, Zach Brown. The check flag has now fallen, so are we going soon? Oh yeah, Xavi's also moved up to Tier 1, so Red Bull have confirmed an all-new driver lineup for next season. What else do we have? Then we get the next piece of actual news, that being the arrival of Ferrari driver X Williams. Frosted Cheese has signed for Alpine and is not particularly happy about it. And then later it was announced that we'd be having Sweatback Flame in the Ferrari. But we do have Mr. Business starting from pole position for the Grand Prix. He's going to be followed by Dan on the front row, and then it's Fresh and Jamie Cash behind them. It's looking like we've got a dry race up ahead of the drivers. I'm just going to invite EJ, who disconnected. We do have some rain forecast. Yeah, it's looking like we get some rain about early, like sort of a bit earlier than the middle point of the race. So that the way that plays out will drastically impact how the race plays out. And then it's looking like it's going to be intermediate for the rest of the race beyond that point. It's looking like we're not going to... It's looking like we're not actually going to have a lobby restart this time, and that's crazy. Tier 2 is improving. Just how long left? It is oh, I did not mean to do that. It is right, 10 seconds to go, and we're not going to have a lobby restart, which honestly is absolutely crazy. Never happens, if I'm honest. But we're here for it. We just wait now until I mean, it's gone to the minute. Are we gonna go or are we gonna not? Right. Here we go. Oh, wait, you don't need to tell me I'm in spectator mode again. Off we go. So, tyres. It's mediums and softs. No drivers going for the hards. Top 6 of Mr. Business, Dan, of Fresh, of Jammy Cash, of Jay-Z, and of Perkins have all gone with the medium compound tyre. Footface behind them is starting on the soft. It's actually raining already. So in the time that we've been waiting on the grid, it has started raining. Yeah, the soft tyre runners are going to benefit so much. So, top 6, Mr. Business, Dan, Fresh, Jammy Cash, Jay-Z, Perkins, all mediums. Footface on softs, Jammy on the mediums, Havoc Gamer on softs. Max, Kyle, Great Pup, Hart, Clive, Dom, EJ, Andrew, all on the mediums. Falcon on the soft. Mr. Cactus on the mediums. Fluffy on the mediums. So these medium runners are going to have a massive disadvantage compared to that of the soft runners, as the rain has already started to fall. Oh, who's that that's just overtaken everything? What's Jay-Z doing? I don't think you're meant to overtake on the formation lap. Right. We just wait for these 20 drivers to get this race underway. as we await 36 laps of the Red Bull Ring. The rain has begun, and we just wait to see how it's going to play out. The 5 red lights. And it's lights out, and away we go. And Dan has had a very good start there. He's going to take the lead from Mr. Business before they get to the first corner. Dan leads them away into turn 1. Mr. Business fighting him on the outside. There's a bit of contact between the two of them. Dan gets a little tap from the Mercedes, and now he's under pressure from Fresh, who's going to try and go all the way around the outside into turn 3. It's almost 3 wide. Jamie Cash had a little think about it. Dan on the inside is going to get that move done on Fresh, who goes wide onto the sausage curb. He half spins that. Got a Jamie Cash to make a bit of contact with someone behind them. Fresh and Jamie Cash now side by side in towards turn 4. The Mercedes looking to have got that move done on the inside. The rain still continuing to fall. There's a little bit of crunching in the background as Jay-Z has been spun into the wall, and that is him facing the wrong way at turn 5. Jay-Z not having a good start at all there in the McLaren car. Footface and Perkins side by side. The soft tires seem to work well for the Ferrari driver. Have a gamer on the back of Perkins as well here, but he's not going to be close enough to go for a move. Hard has got himself up into P8 with a brilliant start and a good first lap. But Mr. Business leads them away from Dan and from Jamie Cash. And Dan completely dropping that Mercedes behind him. He's going to chase after the Mercedes in the lead of the race. There's no DRS just yet, and we may not even get it this race. So Mr. Cactus has had a spin at the first corner. It may be, but by lap 3, DRS will have been disabled due to... oh, there's a spin there for Hammer Gamer at turn 3. He's had a little spin and faced the wrong way. But it may be, as we see the first driver already opting for the intermediate tyres. It may just be that by the time the DRS gets enabled on lap 3, that we don't actually get it because of rain, as Falcon facing the wrong way at turn 5. The gap from Mr. Business to Dan, I have no clue what it is because the game doesn't want to tell us. They come around again onto lap 3. Dan with the fastest lap of the race, as Hart facing the wrong way on the pit lane entry. And he's had a spin. Is he going to come into the pit lane or is he not? I can't quite tell. He is coming into the pits. As Danny's on the back of Mr. Business. He's got the DRS, but he's going to wait for the next time around. There's a lot of drivers opting to come in for inters early. It's definitely too early at this stage, but it might just be intermediate conditions within a lap or 2. There's a yellow flag. I think Mr. Cactus has had a spin. Here goes Dan on the inside of Mr. Business. They're going side by side through turn 4, and Dan has, I think, got himself through. Yes, he has. He made the move on the inside. Mr. Business is going to fight back, but he does not have the chance to go for the move. Dan moves up into the race lead on lap 3. And now they go blasting their way down. Dan is just going to try and open up that gap again. Cliffy Clive has got himself ahead of Great Pup. Is that a little bit of damage to the front wing of the Aston Martin? Yes, it is. He comes into the pit lane for a nose change to get, and possibly for the intermediate tyres as well. Still no signs of the intermediate tyres as Mr. Business, he's choosing to stay behind. He doesn't want the to overtake just yet. He's going to wait until turn 4 and then he's going to go for it again. It's behind them, Fresh and Jamie Cash are relatively close on the racetrack to each other, but there's not going to be a move there anytime soon, and there's not going to be a move here unless Mr. Business really fancies a late lunge. He does, but he's not late enough on the brakes to make any move work. Great Pup's come back out on the soft tyres, so it might be the faster tyre at the moment, but it's not going to be the faster tyre for long, as Andrew and EJ are having the battle of the disconnected cars. I can invite Hart as into the pits there comes Mr. Business. He thinks it's time for the intermediate tyres. Into the pits he comes. There's a yellow flag. Something's gone on in that pack of Jamie Cash and Perkins seem to have made some contact, as they've both gone off the circuit. Mr. Business now suiting his car up with some intermediate tyres. So is Jamie Cash. And how long will Dan, Fresh and Kyle choose to stay out in the respective leads of the race? Footface punts in the back of Kyle. They make a bit of contact through turn 3, but Kyle does remain ahead of the Ferrari despite that half spin that he had, having been rammed into the back by Footface. It's the battle of the ages here between EJ and Andrew, just driving through each other. Surely Dan's got to come into the pit lane sometime soon, but is it time yet? Jay-Z's retired in the pit lane. Hart's car has been repitted and he's gone back out onto the hard tyres. So while he disconnected, he's been completely and utterly screwed over by the game. Dan still leads by 20 seconds. It doesn't appear that it's the right call yet to come in for the Inters. Although maybe if the gap's starting to come down, it might be now time to come into the pit, as all these cars do. Everyone coming into the pit lane, which promotes Mr. Business up into P7, and he is definitely gaining now. He's run about half a second in the last 2 corners alone, compared to Dan. Dan has to come in this lap if he wants any chance of competing for the rest of this race. It's now or never for Dan. If he doesn't come in now, that will really just lose him the race, as Mr. Business is catching by about 6/10 a lap at this stage. Yeah, Dan is coming into the pits from the lead of the race. And in he comes in the Williams, going for the intermediate tyres. So is Liberty Clive, and I think so will pretty much everyone, as Mr. Business might well get the DRS of all these cars. If he doesn't, he's going to get it from Havoc Gamer, who's completely missed the pit lane there, as Dan does come in for the intermediate tyres. We're going to follow along with Mr. Business, who's going down the main straight at the moment. DRS now disabled. They're going to be near side by side through the first corner, as Mr. Business, I think, is just going to come out ahead. It's not by much, but Mr. Business leads the Austrian Grand Prix on lap 7. Dan stayed out 1 lap too long, and that is the difference between P1 and P2. Fresh as well, making massive gains on Dan on that previous lap. I doubt the 2-lap freshness will make a difference, but here he goes anyway. Danny wants that lead of the race back. ERS levels very similar between the two of them. But Danny's not quite had the opportunity yet. But there's a slow Alpine near them as well. That's Falcon on into the final corner. If he could get involved as well. I mean, the 2-lap freshers could make a difference after the 36, but at least at this stage, it won't be the deciding factor. Danny's closing in, but I don't think he's going to be closing in enough as Hart comes into the pit lane to put on actually a set of intermediates after his AI decided to go back onto the hards. But in these wet conditions, Fresh is catching them, and he's catching them quickly, especially if they continue to battle. Dan gets shown the outside line by Mr. Business, and there's no way through there for him. But he's closing in again. He goes to the outside again. He switches to the inside very late. Dives down the inside. There's going to be the side by side. Mr. Business leaves just about enough space. They're going to be still side by side into turn 6. This is allowing Fresh to catch up so much time. They're still just about side by side. Dan is just about holding on from Mr. Business, but they make contact, and that is the Mercedes spun around at turn 7 and 8, and that could be race ending compared to what from where he was before. He rejoined down in P4, possibly P5. He's going to have to slot him behind Clivety Clive. Fresh now is closing in on Dan, who may see himself a time penalty for that incident, depending on the verdict of the stewards. But all Dan can do is get his head down and open up as large of a gap as he can. Dom retires from the session in the pit lane on lap 9. Footface is, for Mr. Business's sake, he's going to want to get past these drivers as soon as he can. For Dan and Fresh's sake, they're going to want Footface to pull off an absolute defensive masterclass against the Mercedes driver. He just needs to be fast where he needs to and slow where he can be. And then just keep the Mercedes behind. The gap out front is about 1.4 seconds at this stage, as they're just going to try and close that down. Dan is going to try and open it up, as something has happened to Fluffy there. Everyone is going to be on the inters for the time being. So, the biggest winner so far, Footface is up 3. EJ is up 5 somehow. Andrew's also up 5. Fluffy up 7, down in 20th. Kyle, one of the biggest losers, must have been involved in some form of incident. Probably the biggest loser, I'd say, would be Hart, who was one of the biggest winners at the start, but then he got screwed over by a disconnect. And Perkins has got herself past Jamie Cash, back up into the P6 position where she started the race. Clivety Clive as well is having a brilliant drive so far to stay in P9, and is actually on pace with Mr. Business at the moment. There's a yellow flag. That is going slowly. That's Fresh who's going slowly. From second place, it's going incredibly slowly. Mr. Business has gone off as well. So there's 2 of the championship titans having major high-profile mistakes on the same really part of the track, which promotes Clivety Clive up to B4, and not that far behind Footface either. But all of that means that Dan now leads with a gap of around 5 seconds compared to Fresh. I wish we could see a replay of what happened. Fluffy into the pit lane, gets overtaken by Great Pup. As that's Hearts being shown the blue flag of Footface. But now Dan, it's a completely different race now. It was just try to manage the gap to Fresh, try to extend it a bit as well. But now it's completely just manage the gap, manage the car, and at least at this stage, Dan has a very nice, very comfortable gap out front. Into the pit lane comes the Red Bull off Mr. Cactus. A lap down as well. Clivety Clive isn't quite as close to Footface as he was before. He's got to worry about Perkins before too long, who's probably going to be catching him soon. But Danny's just extending that gap since his spin. Fresh has just had no confidence whatsoever. Oh yeah, that's just unlucky, man. Just when your internet goes out. And he's just got a 5.8 second advantage to Fresh now, and he's just got to manage that. Because he could quite easily... Like, he could quite easily just manage that gap, extend it, and then just hold it, and then he doesn't really have to do anything anymore. But Fresh, I think he's lost a lot of confidence and just pace in general, as it does definitely appear that I think he may even be slower than Footface at this stage of the Grand Prix on lap 13 of 36. As the two Mercedes going to go side by side into turn 3. Jamie Cash goes a little bit deep, which allows Mr. Business to get the switchback on him, gets the superior traction, and moves back ahead of his teammate. But these two squabbling will allow Havoc Game to close in. Jamie Cash with a late lunge. Does he have the chance? No, he doesn't. He can't make that move work. No, I can't invite you because you're not online. Maybe if I can find you in here, I will, but I don't think I can. I'll try in a second. Perkins is definitely closing in on Clifford Clive at this stage, as Falcon picks up a 3-second time penalty. That's his first of the race. Yeah, we go, you're online now. Perkins is most definitely closing that gap down, as Clifford Clive does seem to have gone a little bit deep there and lost a couple of tenths, possibly even half a second that he lost, just through one little mistake, running a little bit wide, and that's just going to allow Perkins to close in a bit more. Yeah, the closest gap at the moment really is the two Mercedes, and they're not close. Perkins Clive will be an interesting one soon. She's definitely faster at this stage. The gaps are all just kind of being managed, I think, at this point. No one really going for any move. No one close enough to go for a move. Considering he's been disconnected for the first 15 laps, EJ's not doing half bad. I mean, he's still ahead of Fluffy, who's driving, Hearts, who's driving, Mr. Cactus, who's driving, and Falcon, who's driving. Oh, Falcon maybe isn't driving. Oh, no, he definitely is. He's just being lapped. Perkins is definitely close to the back of Clifford Clive. Is this going to be the lap? I think it is, that she pulls to the outside. Clifford Clive doesn't fight it. Although maybe he does. He massively seems to have missed his braking point. And that's a very simple switchback manoeuvre for the Alpine driver, who gets herself up into P4. And now has a 4-second gap to the next car, Footface. But across a 20-lap rate, or 20 laps to go, that should be doable. Jamie Cash has completely dropped off the back of his teammate. I mean, looking at the standings at the moment, Danny's 6.5 seconds clear. Looking at the standings at the moment, his main rivals, Sherry and Mr. Business, are both out of position. Mr. Business down in P6 and Sherry down in P9. There's a safety car deployed, as there's something that's gone on at the pit lane entry. That's Falcon, who's crashed at the pit lane entry. The safety car's deployed, and that suddenly massively changed the face of the race. So Falcon just had a spin on the pit lane entry, or possibly just through the last corner. And Dan's going to come into the pit lane. for another set of intermediates. He's going to pit. They're all going to pit. Fresh is pitting. Footface is going to pit. They're all going to come into the pit lane. And this is going to massively change the race. Because a race that we thought was going to be a battle of conserving, just save your tyres, manage your car, make it to the checkered flag, is now going to be everyone on the same piece of tarmac, open those gaps, stomp on the power, and run away as fast as you can. Or at least with Dan it's going to be that. For Fresh, it's going to be close in and get on the power as soon as possible and make those places. Yeah, there's the two Mercedes boys going to have to double stack. Could cost them possibly a place to have it. Gamer on the line for Jammy Cash, but no, he does remain ahead. But that's going to be a lifeline for Xavi as well, who's down in P9, seemed to be down and out, is now completely back in this one. So we're only just at the halfway point. So they're all just in one big train. Haas wants to get through past Dan so that he can unlap himself and go through. I mean, I don't see why not if you're Dan, but I mean, I guess then he might run the risk of being overtaken by Fresh. If Fresh wants to get ahead of Hearts, Hearts wants to get ahead of Dan so that he can be unlapped. I think in Hearts' position, either I get past Dan or I concede to all these guys, really. But I don't know which he's going to try and do. They're telling Hearts to let the cars through. Yeah, Hart says, oh, someone's gone round there. That's a Red Bull. Mr. Cactus has just had a spin under the safety car. Right, now Dan's being told to let Hearts through. I'm genuinely confused what's happening at this stage. But we're going to go for one more lap under the safety car, in which hopefully Hearts is going to be able to unlap himself. Yeah, it's a reset, but it's under safety car. Is Dan going to let Hearts through? I don't think he will. Yeah, Hearts does, I think, now gain the place. No, he's got a 5-second penalty for it. But the safety car is in. Now we just wait for Dan to restart. He goes now into the final corner. There you go. Dan's gone nice and early. As Hearts has come in, so he is going to stay a lap down. But Dan has made a brilliant restart there, and he leads by about 6-7 tenths of a second before they even get to the first corner. And it's a very strong restart from Dan that's putting him in the right position to go for that race win. Here comes Perkins on foot face. It looked like she'd have no chance of making that move. Actually, no, it didn't. It was only 4 seconds back. She goes for the move now into turn 3. Foot face leaves her the room, and she gets the better exit and moves up into the podium places. There's yellow, there's blue flags behind. Mr. Business gets himself ahead of Cliffy Clive for P5. Xavi gets past Havoc Gamer into P8, but he's going to keep fighting him. Is Havoc Gamer on the outside, but Xavi does have the superior traction and gets that move done and dusted. The question is, will Perkins be able to get a move on Fresh before Fresh gets a move on Dan? As the gap from second to third is currently smaller than that between first and second. But then also she's got Footface right behind her to deal with. But Footface has just picked up a 3-second time bounty, so possibly not. And the gap out front has extended to 1.3 seconds. And Fresh, he's just not got the pace that he needs compared to Dan or Perkins. And it may be a case of the Alpine going for the Aston Martin before too long. We're unlikely to see any battle between an Aston and an Alpine in real life at the moment, but as Fresh has picked up a 3-second time bounty for multiple warnings down in second place, and that puts Perkins into that net P2 position, whether or not she finishes ahead on the road. At this stage, she would be on the second step of the podium, but she's got to worry about Mr. Business behind as well, because he's got a championship on the line that he's fighting Dan for. And he's actually closer to Perkins than she is to Fresh. And she's catching faster. It's a massive lunge up the inside from Footface. Misses his braking point and just clatters Mr. Business very wide on the road. Perkins made a big mistake in the traction zone as well. So all of that means Mr. Business didn't lose too much comparatively. But they did both lose out compared to Fresh. But other than that, they're all decently spread out, other than those two. And as Dan just extending his advantage out front, Fresh trying to extend that gap to Perkins, but Mr. Business will be getting ahead of the Alpine soon, and then keeping Mr. Business at bay is a whole different task. Because Perkins isn't slow, but Mr. Business is Mr. Business. And he means business when he needs to. As they come around that first corner, here he comes on Perkins, goes to the outside. And Perkins, she tries to fight it, but has no way of doing so. Mr. Business moves up into third, but as it stands, will still finish behind Perkins once time penalties are applied. There's of course no DRS at this stage. And I doubt we will get it at all in this Grand Prix, but you can still kind of drag yourself along with a bit of slipstream, copy someone's lines, and just follow them for a bit. It's a bit easier than matching their pace when you're the one ahead. But now we wait to see how much Mr. Business will gain on Fresh. As Sherry has got himself ahead of Jammy Cash, and Clifty Clive ahead of him picks up a 3-second time penalty. So once all these time penalties are applied, Sherry will be... Oh, he's in a net P5 at the moment. As he's going to go to the outside of Clifty Clive. There's a yellow flag as Falcon has made the same mistake again, and it's a safety car again. For the exact same reason as before, as Falcon has spun into the pit lane and lost his front wing. The same incident 2 times has both times have caused a safety car. Now that advantage that Dan had has gone down the drain again. That advantage that Fresh had over Mr. Business is also going down the drain. No one this time, though, is choosing to pick. Liberty Clive does. I think he's the only one. Or Kyle does. I think Liberty Clive and Kyle might be the only ones choosing to pit here. So does EJ. So Clive, Havoc, Kyle and EJ are the only 4 coming into the pits. So, as it stands... But how did Mr. Business get ahead of Buck? What? What? How did Mr. Business get ahead of Perkins? Oh, I know that. Yeah, they overtook each other. He overtook him. He overtook her. Yeah. I don't know. I kind of just forgot that happened. Right, so, as it stands, it's Dan leading from Perkins after time penalties are applied. But if they can open the gap, it'll be Dan from Fresh from Perkins. Havoc Gamer has picked up a penalty for a collision with Kyle. Now, I didn't see that incident, but for a penalty, that must have been a hefty one. But the safety car is in this lap. Right. And then we get 10 laps left to decide the winner. Mr. Business and Fresh both need to be about 0.3 of a lap faster than Perkins in her Alpine. Dan just really needs... He can afford to lose the lead. Of course, he would rather not. You can't gamble on anything as he accelerates them away for the restart. And the front three have kept very close, but Perkins has dropped back a bit. Mr. Business going for it on Fresh as they go into turn 1, and he makes that move on the outside before they even make it to the corner. Goes straight off the track. Is the Ferrari of Footface. He's tumbling down the order, having completely just forgotten almost to brake for the first corner, it seems like. And he goes into the gravel trap, and that is a virtual safety car deployed. As there's been an incident on the track. Fresh has just gone into the back of Mr. Business. There's so much concertina going on. Up at turn 3, there are cars stopping. There's someone off the track. Mr. Cactus has got a drive-through penalty for speeding. I'm not entirely sure what just happened at the hairpin, or what happened with Footface at turn 1. But we've got a virtual safety car immediately after the full course safety car, which is just going to wear down the clock a bit. And gets Dan that tiny bit closer to race victory, and Perkins that tiny bit closer to a P2. As Max has sped as we go green again. Dan has got a good restart though, as he leads by a bit over a second compared ahead of Mr. Business and Fresh. Perkins behind a little bit further back in the Alpine, and then right on the back of her is the Red Bull of Xavi. I think those two were involved in the incident at the top of the hill, but I can't confirm for sure. So I was too busy focusing on what was going on with Footface. Clivety Clive has got himself ahead of Havoc Gamer into turn 1. They're going to go side by side, and Havoc Gamer, the Canadian, gets himself back ahead on the exit. Fresh doesn't have the exit he needs there to get anywhere closer to Mr. Business. Xavi isn't close enough to go for any move either, as they're all just going to fighting their way through. Max and Fluffy going to be side by side into turn 4 as Fluffy gets himself past his teammate, although he goes deep, and Max just lunges it back down the inside and retakes that place. That train of Havoc Gamer down to Kyle, all pretty close at this stage. It's going a little bit deep. Is Clivety Clive with a bit of front wing damage, which I'm not sure where he picked that up from. Probably from that little bit, that big old incident up at turn 3. But he's just limping it in his hat. He just needs to make it to the line. And then maybe he can think about changing that front wing, as into the pit he does indeed come. Hearts with a 3-second time penalty. His first of the Grand Prix. Perkins is staying close to Fresh and to Mr. Business, and that's a mistake on the traction from Fresh. It could be on for another podium for Perkins here. As she's closing in on Fresh, he doesn't need to go for any moves on this track, but I'm sure she might prefer to, rather than banking on time penalties. She's just kind of sitting there behind Fresh. Not close enough to go for a move, but not far enough back to lose out to Xavi. Havoc Gamer got himself past Fluffy into P8. Fluffy looking to be quite slow at this stage of the race. He's got EJ on the back of him. Will be looking for a move shortly, but he doesn't get the opportunity to this time around. He might cut back in on the inside, but he can't. Fluffy goes a little bit deep, picks up a 3-second time penalty, and Max comes into the pit lane from 12th place. Fresh making a little mistake on the traction again. And here comes Perkins. She's being squeezed right to the inside. They make contact. Fresh had gone round into the barriers. They invite Shabby through into P3. And there's another safety car. Fresh is out of the race. There's just... She went for the gap. The gap was being constantly closed as she was there. And that was just bound to happen once you saw those positions. Mr. Cactus has got another drive-through penalty. And with 6 laps to go, will these guys choose to come into the pit lane again? They do. Dan's coming in. Mr. Business is going to stay out. Shabby stays out. Perkins stays out. Dan might be the only one into the pit lane. Dan is the only driver who's opted to pit here, and that may be what costs him. And Mr. Cactus has just been disqualified from multiple penalties. But Dan has led every lap, or nearly every lap so far, but now he's fallen all the way down to P7 at this restart. There's gonna be a handful of laps to go. And Dan down in P7 has probably made the wrong call this time around. Right. Safety car in at the end of this lap. And now Mr. Business, who started on pole, has got himself back into the race lead. And it's just going to come around the final corner. Mr. Business bolts now. But he's got that 3-second time penalty, so it probably will not matter in the end. Perkins picks up a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings as they go green on the restart. Mr. Business leads them away into turn 1. He's got a comfortable advantage. Dan needs to get a move on down in P7. He's around a lot of drivers who all have time penalties. He just needs to clear them as quickly as possible. Hope they don't defend too aggressively from him. Here he goes on Great Bub as well, who also has a 3-second time penalty. Lunges down the inside. He'd leave just about enough space, does the Aston Martin, and Dan moves up into P5. He really needs to get a move on here. At the moment, that's looking like it may be a net P4 if he's lucky, but he still needs to get that. He needs to get his Williams through these places if he wants to get a decent result. It's looking like it's gone from Dan P1, Xavi P9 to Xavi P1 and Dan P5. It's turned around. This race seemed completely out of Xavi's hands, but 3 safety cars in the last few laps have turned it in the favour of the Dutchman in the Red Bull. Jamie Cash goes wide. Dan moves up into P4. He's got a long way to go, but he is in a net podium position at the moment. As Perkins is falling back compared to Xavi, but Dan is closing in on them both. He's got the fresher tyres. He's been the fastest driver pretty much all weekend. As going wide there is Perkins in the Alpine. Dan is going to capitalise on that, and he's going to gain all the way down this back straight. Is he going to lunge one into turn 4? He needs to be aggressive with the moves. He goes late on the brakes, down the inside. But Perkins is still going to fight him, but he doesn't have the traction required to do so. Dan moves up into 3rd place. P3 on the road. Potentially P2 if he can get a move on and get close enough to Mr. Business, which he is at the moment. If he can properly get a move on, he might even be able to overtake Xavi before the end. There's not going to be any DRS due to the weather conditions, but look how much he's gaining. He doesn't need any DRS. They come around the final corner. He gets so much of a better run, and he's going to do it already. Round the outside, he's left a little space, as Xavi can afford. They're going to go side by side into the first corner. This is the second time this race, and Dan does get himself round the outside, and is up into the net race lead. We thought he had blundered it, but he's made it work, and he's just got to keep that gap to Mr. Business, not pick up any unnecessary time penalties, and he will just about win in Austria. With the freshest tyres out there, and the fastest lap. He's just got to keep his cool now. And he's pulled that gap to a second already. He's got that massive advantage over Xavi and over Dan. And over Mr. Business, sorry. And to be honest, he might even be close enough to overtake Mr. Business on the final lap. But he goes wide. He goes wide to Dan. He doesn't pick up a time penalty for it, but there's mistakes like that could cost him his track limits advantage. And it's probably why he may choose to overtake Mr. Business on the final lap. Just in case he does that again and picks up a time penalty. We don't know how many warnings he's had, but it could have been that was his second one. There's a little lag back from Mr. Business, and that's just going to allow Dan to close further. They're on the final lap here. Is he going to go for the move on the final lap? I think he might just choose to stick behind. It's always safer to take the win on the track, but he may just choose to stick behind. He gets a much better run. He touched Mr. Business, who goes round. Mr. Business was just so much slower compared to Danny's gone round on the final lap, and that will almost certainly be time penalties going the way of the Williams. But it may not matter. He's 5 seconds clear in the lead of the race compared to Xavi. He's just got to keep it going. And Dan, he's going to win on the track. He's probably going to get a penalty for that. But he wins by 5 seconds. It may just be enough. He wins the Austrian Grand Prix from seemingly nowhere. Xavi comes home P2, but Jamie Cash comes home P3. Perkins P4 after that time penalty. Then it's Clifty Clive. Mr. Business falls to 6th after that incident. Great putt P7. The end of the race was something. that was certainly something. Don't really know what to say after that. But Dan somehow emerged victorious after all of that, followed by Sherry by 6 seconds. Then it's Jamie Cash, then it's Perkins, then Clifty Clive, Mr. Business, Great Pup Kyle, Havoc Gamer Max, EJ, Footface, Andrew, and Hart. Then not finishing was Fluffy, Fresh, Falcon, Dom, Jay-Z, and Mr. Cactus. But honestly, like, Driver of the Day wise, like, both everyone and no one. Honestly, I have no clue who I'm going to have to give this to. You know what, I'm going to give it the way Clifty Clive, P14 to P5. Like, it's a good race on his end, and good comeback drives, lots of... he was just kind of... He was there, he kept it pretty consistent the entire race. Don't think he had any incidents. But, I mean, thank you for watching that slightly chaotic end to the stream. We will see you tomorrow night for Tier 1 racing in Suzuka.